All right, so let's practice some trees. Trees are always fun to do, and everyone has their own unique style when it comes to trees. No matter how many classes I've taught, everyone's tree is always different. And I just want us to think back to when you were younger, when you were taught to draw a tree back in the day. We always did like this, the symbol of a tree, like this little cone shape. So people have a tendency to want to paint their trees very basic as well, because as humans, we always try to simplify everything, including stick figure people. So for your tree, this is another way that we used to draw it all the time when we were younger. All right. So let me zoom in on this. So what I want you to try to do is get a more realistic tree. And if you need to go outside to study the trees, go outside, take a look at them. These are what we have here in Maine a lot, and they are very random, and the branches tend to go up when they first, or when you're at the very tips of the trees. So, and they're very random as far as how the branches grow. If you look at a tree, they're not perfect. Every tree is unique. They have different bends than them. And the more random that you can get a tree looking on paper, the more realistic it's going to look. So as you see, as I come down here, the left side might be a little bit longer than the right side. I skip a spot because the branches usually are not directly across from one another. And then I'm just kind of filling in a couple little spots here. So as you paint these in, they can thicken up. So you can see how I have the branches as they come down the tree here, they're going to get a little bit fuller, a little bit wider. Those branches are usually a little longer. Again, not always though. Sometimes you have some little stragglers that break off and you get some funny things that happen with trees. But basically, that is what we're looking for. Something that's somewhat random, but yet more realistic looking than the other two. So we're going to go ahead and paint these in now. And I'm going to grab my paints here. So I've got some fresh clean water. My palette is not clean, but that's all right. We're just going to mix up some green color here. And I'm getting a nice little puddle of green on my brush. I'm going to use my small brush. So let's just fill in this one. This is a real basic looking tree here. And I pretty much have lots of water, and then we're going to get a first layer down here where it's nice and wet, and then you can always go in and add some more colors to this. Let's just go ahead and do the brown on the underneath. Try not to touch too much to that underneath of the tree because that brown will bleed up into that rest of that area there. And let's tap in just a little bit of shade and some other variations of color in here. Now let's go ahead and do the one next to us here. As you can see, I'm putting a little bit of pressure as I come out on this one, so it's a little wider in the center, and I lift up on that a little bit as it comes out. A little bit more paint, because you can see where I got a little skip there, and that's where my brush is a little too dry. I didn't have enough paint on there. And sometimes with the smaller brushes, you have to load up on your paint a little bit more because they don't hold as much of the liquid in there, the pigment. So let's go ahead and add some blue to this now. I'm just tapping in a little bit here and there. Again, to give it a little shadow area. I always say this, where there's light, there's dark. So think about those trees where the sun's hitting it, and then you've got sections under there that the sun's not reaching. So that's going to be where your dark areas are. So that's a nice little basic tree. So let's go ahead with this one here on the far left. And again, I always start with the trunk of the tree and bring that down. Now you're not going to see most of that, so that's why it's not brown. I just went ahead and put the green in there, that way we can cover some of that up. Going very lightly on the tips of those trees again and extending out. I'm just doing this little tapping motion. And again, if you want to slow the video down a little bit, you can do that in the bottom left-hand corner. I'll just talk a little funny because it slows my voice down, or it will speed me up if you want to do it faster. But it's a great way to really see how I'm not thinking about it when I'm putting this in here. I'm just basically getting little taps of color down on here, lifting up as I go. Tap, 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 and then working my way down. And you can fill in some of those other areas in between as you do this. Little fir trees, they have those little stems that stick out. So I'm just continuing to make those little branches in there. And it's getting a little bigger as we move down the tree. And then if we want to add a little bit of the ultramarine blue to this, we can again make some little areas of shadow or little pockets of shadow in our tree. And having that variation of color really makes it look more realistic. It gives you more dimension to your painting. So let's say we want to make this one look a little bit more realistic. You can always go back into it. So I'm adding some green and I'm thickening up those areas here. So this is going to look more like a Christmas tree now, or a holiday tree. And we're just going to kind of thicken those up and extend those branches out. Again, with the very tippy top here, we're going to kind of take those branches in an upright position a little bit. So now we have that little perfect Christmas tree. So that gives you some ideas on how to do your trees. And go ahead and practice that again a few times if you want. So we'll be starting our next section and we'll be placing our perfect little trees on our painting. So feel free to practice this again and get comfortable with it before you actually move on to your painting.